Greetings, fencers! I am Orlando and I welcome you to Knightly Arts. Today we will give a closer look to the Ochs, one of the main basic guards of the German tradition of Longsword. We've already introduced the Ochs in our first episode, Introduction to Longsword, so if you haven't seen it, I invite you to go give it a look. We'll leave the descriptions in the video. Now, the Ochs is mainly a high guard, which means it was ideologically meant to deal with high cuts or Hoberhaus. But since combat is a dynamic situation, we can actually use it and adapt it to our own needs. We can use it, for example, as an invitation, which means luring the opponent to attack an opening we want him to attack, or even as a displacement. But before we go in details, let's go and talk with Philippe and see what the masters have to say about the Ochs.
Hi, this is Phil from La Compagnie Medievale, and today we're gonna talk about one of the main guards in the Lichtenauer tradition, the Ochs. The Ochs is a high guard that serves mainly to defend your upper openings, and to do it, we will take out from the words of Master Meyer. Master Meyer describes it thus. The upper part of the combatant is allotted to the Ochs, and as that has two quarters, the right and left, so one can divide the posture of the Ochs into two parts, namely the right and the left. The right Ochs is done thus. Stand with your left foot forward and hold the sword with the hilt up by your head on the right side, so that your point extends toward your opponent's face. For the left Ochs, position yourself opposite to this, that is, stand with your right foot forward and hold your sword with the hilt by your head on the left side, as I have said. So the Ochs is a very interesting guard because from this position you keep a threat with your point, and you can also keep the threat with a cut, a slice, or any other strike that you can receive. What's important to remember about the Ochs is that your hands have to be above your head, else you're gonna get hit either on the hands or on the head. Also, you need to have a little slope inwards on your sword, else what's gonna happen is that you're gonna get your fingers crushed, basically. So this is what the masters say about the Ochs. So this is all I had to say about the Ochs. I will send you back to the rest of the Knightly Arts crew, who will show you how to execute it.
Perfect. So, before we go to our Sala d'Arme, let's introduce the concept of displacement. Now, we will not go into too many details about strong of the blade, weak of the blade. That's gonna be for another specific episode. But let's introduce the concept of how to basically win a bind. And in order to do this, we will use an example. Now, let's assume that two fencers attack each other. Now, something went wrong, the distance was not appropriate, they don't go to target, but their swords clash, and they both end up in long point. We have to assume also three things. First of all, that they are attacking both in the same position in the line of attack, which means nobody actually has a better view of the target or can use geometry to have advantage. Let's also assume that they're using the same momentum during the attack, and they have the exact same physical strength. So we're in a stall now. How do we get out of it? Basic physics comes in handy. Now, let's assume that both swords collide exactly in the middle, which means the fulcrum of this basic leverage is in the middle of each sword. But what if fencer number one raises his hands, keeping approximately the point at the same position? The fulcrum switches its position, and we will have it in the strong part of the blade of fencer number one, which is the part of the blade closer to his hands, and then the weaker part of the blade of fencer number two, which means the part that is further away from the hands. In this specific moment, fencer number one needs extremely less force in order to control the adversary, which will for sure grant him the victory in the bind. And the only thing he can do now is thrust. Now there's one simple thing we have to keep in mind. This will not work if the opponent understands what we're trying to do. So in order to really make it work, it needs to be fast and fluid. If it's not fast and fluid, it's not gonna work. So study a concept, understand it, but then practice, practice, practice.
Hi, I'm Jerome.
And hi, I'm Raphael from la Compagnie Medievale.
Today we will talk a bit further of the Ochs guard we talked last time. So the Ochs, which is one of the four main guard from the German tradition of fencing for the Longsword. So just as a reminder, this was executed that way: from the right, left foot forward, hands cross, the point to the face of the opponent, and the cross guard protecting your hands. And from the left side, the same, but with uncrossed hands in order to still hold properly the sword. So this guard is not a static position to be used all the time of the same manner. So the normal position is very close, with the end close to the head, like that, in order to protect the head to the maximum. So that's the Ochs position, especially in the older traditions. In more recent tradition, it's close to something else which is called a hanging point, which is actually with the end more projected forward with more reach, but also more exposure to the forearm. So hanging points on the right will be this way, on the left, that way.
Since no fighting is static, you can change from one guard to the other. From long point, I can defend from an overhaul as an absence into an Ochs position. I keep my point at him and threaten him with a thrust at his face. I can do the same thing from full guard, or halber in German. Or from Wontag, or roof guard.
Of course, what Raph just executed seconds ago can be done on the other side as well. It's a bit more difficult because it ends up with the arms crossed, but it's the same principle. The only thing is just to be extremely careful to always keep the point menacing forward and not to have some kind of lateral movement when reaching the Ochs position. So if I start from the full guard, okay, and really just rotating in order to keep the point forward all the time. From long point, and from front tag. The Ochs position can be used in order to reply to an attack coming from the opponent. So the most simple situation to which to use it is what we call a Versetzen, which is a displacement, and then with a suspension and rotation. So if we do it from right, first you will parry like that. Then you can go into the Ochs position and go to touch with the point. So if we redo it, first parry, hand and touch in Ochs. On the other direction, so today we talk of the Ochs position, which is one of the basics guard in the German fencing tradition for the longsword. There is of course a lot more to know and to practice about it in actual fight and sparring, but that will be for the next time. See you.
Perfect, so today we saw more applications of the Ochs guard. We saw how to use it to parry Oberhaus or high cuts, how to use it as an invitation, and also to use it as a displacement. But obviously, as we said, combat is a very dynamic situation. There has to be many other situations in which the concept of the Ochs might come in handy. So practice, practice, fight, fight. And obviously your confidence with this basic guard will grow as you practice. Now, thank you for staying with us up until now. See you in the next episode, and à la prochaine.